Restaurant Unstoppable. What the most successful restaurateurs know that you don't. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, president of Rapaport Restaurant Group, Inc., Burt Rapaport. My man, Burt, are you feeling unstoppable today?
Let's do this. I am.
Yes, I cannot wait. And I'm excited for today's conversation. You spent your entire career in the restaurant industry. Going back as far as I see, 1980s is when you were in Florida, but even before that with your family, and you've got incredible notoriety throughout Florida for the accomplishments you've had, and just nationwide, really. So I know this is going to be a great episode, but let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
My quote of the day is, the answer is yes. Now, what is the question?
The answer is yes. Now, what is the question? I love that. Why did you choose that to start off today?
Because we're in the hospitality industry, and I want to find ways to say yes to people.
Yes. I love it. Great way to get started. How do you say yes when clearly the answer is no? And I feel like that's something that's really happening a lot right now. And you're seeing it everywhere in social media, people complaining about how just unreasonable the consumer is being, how unreasonable guests are being off the heels of COVID-19. How do you approach when you want to say yes, but you know that it's just the answer's got to be no?
Well, we try to find options for people. And if an hourly employee can't find a way to say yes, we get a manager involved. And the manager tries to think creatively.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to come in at 7 o'clock on a Saturday night with 4 people and we're totally booked, we say, well, could you come in, the following Saturday or tomorrow night? Or how about, 6:30? Or could I put you on the waiting list?
Yeah. Or something that I've heard other people say, if somebody wants something that you can't provide, then don't say, no, you can't have that. Say, we can't give you that. However, here are some other options, help that person beyond just no, no. However, here's where you can find what you're looking for. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's good, but I think going the extra mile is what really blows people away.
I will not argue against that.
You have to try to astonish your guests.
Yes.
And a good example of that was I had a restaurant and a guest came in and asked for diet ginger ale.
Okay.
And we, of course, how many restaurants have diet ginger ale?
If any.
So my hostess went down to the supermarket, bought a bottle, and came back, and we served it to that guest. That's
an example. That's a perfect example right there of just going above and beyond. I love that. So where does it make sense to start sharing your story? Because I know you're third generation restaurateur, correct?
I am.
So let's pay a little homage to your ancestors.
You got it. So my grandfather opened a restaurant on the Lower East Side of Manhattan in 1923.
Okay.
And it closed in 1973. So 50 years.
Wow.
And my dad worked with my grandfather. And I was literally born in a restaurant because we lived above the restaurant. We lived upstairs. So we had most of our family meals in my grandfather's restaurant. When I got to be about 10 years old, I got my first position there, which was organizing the storeroom. So whenever deliveries came in, I would have to go down. It was in the basement. And break down the boxes, put everything on the shelves. My grandfather was a stickler about details, so every label had to face a certain way. And to this day, my storerooms, all the labels face the same way. If you came over to my house, you'd open the refrigerator, all the labels are facing out. So, little things like that stick with you.
Well, there's already little nuggets coming out in your story of better ways to do things. And why, just for example, why does it make sense to unpackage all the boxes and put things where they belong and be organized on the shelves? Like, what is the benefit of that?
Just efficiency. See what you have, how many there are.
Mm-hmm.
You always, if somebody comes down and needs something, they know where to get it at the same time. Get rid of all those cumbersome boxes, break them down so they don't take up a lot of space in the dumpster.
Well, I mean, just one of the things, I know I can't be the only one who's experienced this, where you're doing inventory, you see a full box. So in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, we have a full box of that. But what you don't realize that inside that box, there's only like maybe one item left. In a giant box, there's only one thing left. So it's not a real representation of what you got. And like you said, it takes up so much unnecessary space.
Right.
So just little details already coming out of today's conversation. What else did your grandfather teach you?
He told me something that all my managers know by heart. And when I was a kid, we went out to dinner to another restaurant, and he said, "Burt, look at those lights." And I said, "What, Grandpa?" And he said, "The light bulbs are out." He said, "That means this restaurant's going to be going out of business soon." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because if they don't take care of details like that, they're not taking care of the more important things."
Ooh, what are the more important things?
Everything from checking the food in at the back door properly, make sure it's prepared properly, hiring the right people, training them properly.
Keep them happy.
Yeah, I mean, everything.
I love it. Any other lessons from your grandfather? Because I know your father, too, is somebody we also have to pay homage to.
Right. Well, for my grandfather, the other thing is that his customers were very difficult. Most of them were European immigrants, and they were hard to deal with. And he said, "I don't have to like these people, but they're always my customers."
Yeah. What did he teach you about shutting off that irritation, that anger that we get sometimes when we don't like somebody? How did he teach you any way to, override that or overcome that?
Not at that age, but once you make the commitment to be in the hospitality industry, you make the commitment to make people happy.
Okay.
You have to treat them like they're a guest in your own home. And we're dealing with people when they're hungry or when they've been drinking. So we usually see people when they're at their worst. And we have to turn them around and astonish them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's talk about your father now, because I know he had a kosher dairy operation?
Well, that was my grandfather's.
That was your grandfather. Okay.
And then my dad worked with him, and when my grandfather was too old to work, my dad took it over.
Okay. And how long was your dad leading the ship?
He was in charge there for about 10 years.
Okay. So you said your grandfather was 1923 to was it 1953 was when he got out of the industry, right?
About 63.
About 63. Okay.
Yeah.
So your dad, was he going from 63 to 73? Is that sound about right?
Right.
Okay. What did your dad teach you?
My dad taught me to take care of your employees.
Okay. What's that look like?
He was very generous. He always paid people more than what they were entitled to.
Mm-hmm.
He treated them like they were family. And that always resonated with me.
Mm-hmm.
And
how did he justify paying them more than what their value was?
Well, he couldn't. But what's the value of a good employee,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to lose good people. And it's like you look at sports, and the best players make a lot of money.
Yeah. I think you have to look at the bigger picture. Like, what is it worth for me to be able to know I can step away from the business for a day or two if I have to? What is it worth for me to not have to be in the business and also teaching and training somebody? Like, there's a lot of added expenses that come that aren't so obvious when you don't have experienced people in your restaurant.
That's so true.
Yeah.
In our industry, a customer wants continuity and consistency, and you don't get that by turning over staff.
Yeah, and you might have to pay a little extra to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a great lesson. What else did he teach you?
He taught me what not to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give me some examples of what not to do. Not to beat up your dad or anything. Go for it.
He didn't always use good judgment. He ran by the seat of his pants. He
reactive, not planner.
Yeah,
instinctual.
Right, he liked to party.
Okay.
More than he liked to work.
Okay.
And you have to find balance in your life and know when to do things.
Okay. We don't have to go any further than that.
Yeah.
So at what point were you saying to yourself, this is like you're in, like this is what you want to do? Because when I think we're on the timeline, we're at 1973, which is when your dad had the restaurant. Do you know when that the kosher operation closed?
Yeah, the neighborhood was changing, and I'd say it closed down in 73.
Okay, but you were in Florida by 1980. So what happened in between?
So, I went to college in 1967.
Okay.
So I was even out of college by then.
Okay.
So
What'd you go to school for?
business.
Okay.
I got a degree in marketing.
Gotcha.
So I didn't think I wanted to be a restaurant owner when I went to college. Both my grandfathers were entrepreneurs. Of course, one was in the restaurant business, one was in the clothing business, and I thought that I'd want to have my own business someday. But when I went to school in Arizona. So when my mom and dad took me to the airport, my dad said to me, "Burt, you're on your own." I said, "Well, what does that mean, Dad?" I'm 17 years old.
What did it mean?
He said, "I'll pay your tuition, but any other money that you want, you're going to have to earn." I said, "Fine." So the only thing I knew how to do was to work in their restaurant. I was a busboy all through high school. So I got a job in a restaurant and worked my way through college, starting as a busboy, becoming a cook, a server, and a bartender.
Okay, so all elements, really.
Yeah.
And at this point, when you graduate, are you still thinking you still have an interest in the restaurant? At what point are you like, okay, this is what I want to do?
So I graduated from school, and I moved to Hawaii and surfed for 6 months and hung out. And my parents said, you gotta come back here and get a real job now. So I went back to New York, and after being in Hawaii, just New York wasn't for me.
I don't blame you.
And I said, I'm going to go back to Arizona and get a master's in real estate.
Okay.
Because real estate was booming there at the time, and I thought that could be a good opportunity. So when I went back out to Arizona, I needed to make money again, so I got a job at a restaurant that was just opening up as a bartender called Victoria Station.
Okay.
And they were a chain out of San Francisco. This was their 6th location. So I was bartending there, and then about 6 months into it, the manager asked me if I wanted to get into the management program. And I said, "Oh, that's interesting. Maybe that's a good idea. I could learn a lot."
Yeah.
And I liked the company. They had good values.
You said you're in Arizona at this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I agreed to get into the management program, and I went out to San Francisco for the training, and it sent me to Los Angeles to become an assistant manager. And I said, that was the point that I said, I could do this.
Why?
I had a passion for it. I certainly had the background. It was part of my DNA. Yeah. I grew up in it. And I realized once you get up to this level of management, it's a whole different thing. I fell in love with being a manager, and I said, I'm going to open up my own restaurant someday.
Okay, what you said it's your passion. What specifically are you passionate about when it comes to being a manager?
People.
Okay, what about people?
Just being able to mentor younger people, being able to be a problem solver, meeting a lot of guests. As a server and a bartender, I interacted a lot, which I really enjoyed. And as a manager, you really get to make decisions that could make people's experience that much better.
Yeah. What part about mentoring others really resonates the most with you?
Looking at them when you tell them something and you could see that they say, got it.
So helping them grow, seeing growth.
Absolutely. Yeah. Helping people grow is so rewarding.
I can relate with that, man. Absolutely. So this is your first corporate setting as far as restaurants go, and it seems like the Victoria Station had a lot of system, process, order. They had a culture. what did they teach you? Like, where were you before this experience, and what were some of the key lessons that they gave you at this point as far as how to be a manager and operations, things like that?
So the 3 owners of that company all graduated from the Cornell Hotel School, and they brought with them all these systems and programs that I'm using right till today. And they just gave me a foundation for success.
Can you get specific? Can you share some of those systems, like the key systems that really set you up for success?
Well, it mostly things like you don't bank percentages, you bank dollars.
Yes.
You know?
What does that mean?
It means that if a chef says, well, I can't run a veal chop because it's a 40% food cost, and I'll say, but you're going to make $25 on it. Wouldn't you rather sell a veal chop and make 25 and sell a pork chop and make 15?
Yeah, I got you. So it's margins basically that you're looking at, cash flow.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. What else? These are key lessons that you learned while at Victoria Station.
Right. They told me that things are black and white. So you're either on time or you're late.
So standards.
Right. Your uniforms are either clean or they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And so those type of philosophies have stayed with me, my whole career.
Let's go deeper. When it comes to standards, it's either black or white. But what's the secret to reinforcing those standards?
Okay.
In a way that isn't like rigid or hard. Like how do you be soft about it?
Well,
or can you not?
Well, I'll tell you a good story about
Please.
that. You can't. It depends on the employee. Like some people need to be treated with kid gloves, and some people you need to just smack around. And so I was an assistant manager with them for 6 months, and they promoted me to be a general manager in Houston, Texas, at the lowest volume store in the entire company. Now I'm 24 years old, general manager.
Okay.
So I go into the store, and I call an all-staff meeting, and I said, okay, you guys don't know me, but here's the deal. I want you to be on time. I want you to be in your uniforms. I want teamwork. I want cleanliness. And I want guests to be happy. If you can't say yes to somebody, come and get me, and we'll figure out a way to make this happen.
Yeah.
Right? So that next Saturday night, I stood at the back door at 5 o'clock. 5 people showed up late, and all 5 got fired.
Okay.
So me and my 2 assistant managers waited tables that night with the rest of the staff. And from that point on, guess what? People came in on time. They came in uniform, and sales start to increase.
So what's the lesson there?
The lesson is discipline.
Yeah.
Discipline, you see it in the military, you see it in sports, you see it in every successful business.
Yeah. And also that you said something and you follow through. Like you told them, and if you don't follow through with the standards, then people don't take them seriously.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you talk to any of my past employees, the good employees will say, I love Burt, and the employees that didn't do a good job say, we hate Burt, because if you're not going to do a good job, you're not going to work here.
Okay. So how long were you with Victoria Station?
I was with them for almost 6 years. Like I said, I started with them when they had 6 restaurants as a bartender. And then I left when they had 90 restaurants, and I was running the East Coast.
Wow. So you learned a lot about scale, too. What were some of the key lessons they taught you about scale?
Don't grow too fast.
Okay. How do you know you're not growing too fast?
When you're not overstretched, when you're not stretched too thin, when you can't find good people to get the job done right.
Okay.
Like I opened 3 restaurants in 2 weeks with them.
Wow.
And how do you do that?
How do you do that?
You can't do that.
Okay. I'm happy that's the answer. But you say don't overextend yourself, don't overstretch. So specifically, what are the metrics we're looking at? Is it cash flow? Is it people? What is it?
It's all of the above.
Okay.
It's all of the above. I mean, it's not about how big you are. It's about how well you execute.
Okay. So how do you know when you are ready to expand then?
When you have the people that are ready to do it. You're only as strong as your weakest link. So if you don't have the people on board, or you can't acquire the right people, then you probably shouldn't be doing it.
I love it. So at what point did you find your way to Florida?
So I had a friend and a partner through this whole Victoria Station process, and our careers paralleled each other. And Victoria Station was a public company, and they started making some changes in their quality. They cut portion sizes, they cut the quality of the food, and he and I felt, well, it's probably time to move on.
Okay.
So we got an offer to move down to Miami to be partners in a restaurant. So we both left, drove down to Miami. We spent 2 weeks sharing my grandmother's fold-out cot before we found a place to live.
Okay.
And we opened our first restaurant in Miami in the end of 1979.
Okay. So this restaurant you opened, was that the partnership that so who were your business partners at this time? How were you discovered? Like, what was pulling you down to Miami?
So yeah, we had a group of investors who were
Okay.
looking to open a restaurant. They wanted to do it in Fort Lauderdale, but we found a great location in Miami.
Okay.
And we opened it up. You know, his name was Max, hence, you know, we're sitting in
Yeah.
Burt and Max's right now.
Is this your partner that you came over from Arizona with? Or did we move to Miami with?
That we worked in Victoria Station with, and he and I
Gotcha,
moved to Miami
Gotcha.
together. So we opened up our first restaurant called Raffles. It was similar to like a Fridays, Houlihan's, whatnot.
Got you. So what I'm curious about, you said you had investors, people that you knew somehow, that knew about you and Max.
Right.
How did you become acquainted with these folks back in the 80s?
Max had a friend who had a group that was interested, that was down here, that was interested in
Opening a restaurant.
Yeah.
Okay.
They actually wanted to open up a nightclub,
Okay.
but we convinced them to open up a restaurant
Why?
because that's what we did. You know, we weren't really nightclub guys.
Yeah.
And we explained to him nightclubs are more trendy and it's a different kind of vibe and whatnot.
Yeah. Okay. So what were your biggest, this is the first restaurant you've ever opened on your own, right?
Yes.
Now, I know we're going back to the 80s. I know the times have changed a lot, but what were your biggest challenges back then?
The biggest challenge back then was managing our success.
We were just talking about your biggest challenge, which you said was managing your success, right? Did I hear
Right.
that correctly?
Right.
What do you mean by that?
So our first restaurant in Miami was at the entrance to a mall.
Okay.
And we had great food. We hired a chef from the Culinary Institute, and we're making everything from scratch, French fries from scratch, you know, just done everything as good as it could have been done. And it was packed from noon until 9 o'clock at night. And then it was dead. And we're saying, here we are in Miami in 1980,
Yeah.
when there's all kinds of action, and we're ready to close up. It doesn't make sense. So Max, my partner, said, why don't we get a band to come in here and play?
Okay.
So one of our busboys was in the music program at the University of Miami, which is a great music school. And I said, Cliff, do you have any friends that are in a band that might want to play here? He says, yeah, I got some friends that are great. And I said, well, if they're interested, bring them in. We'll talk to them. So these guys come in, and we're sitting here talking about playing. And it seems like they're good guys and know what they're doing. So I offer them the job. Would you guys like to play here and start on Wednesday night? And they said, sure, that sounds great.
So what kind of music was it? Like an instrumental, like brass band, or like what was going on?
They sang, and they played mostly covers, you know,
Okay.
80 covers.
Yeah.
And so they said, okay. I said, you guys want this gig? And they said, yeah. So I said, how's Wednesday at 9 o'clock? And they said, that's great. And I said, by the way, what do you guys call yourself? And they said, the Miami Sound Machine.
I've heard that name.
Yeah, I mean, that was a huge band back
yeah.
then. Gloria Stefan.
I'm dating
and the
myself
Miami
right now.
Sound Machine. Yeah, right.
Okay.
So that's a big time band.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
And
People
my-
must be shaking their head at me right now because I'm not more familiar with
right.
it. Sorry.
So I said to them, all right, don't be late. Because, you know, they were
Yeah.
just college kids at
Yeah.
the time. This was before
That's
they're
crazy.
famous or anything like that, you know.
So
But,
how did they? What kind of influence did they have in your operation?
They brought us from being dead at 9 o'clock to be to be packed right until closing,
Which was what
which
time
was
that?
2:00 in the
Okay.
morning back then.
Wow.
And we were selling more champagne than most places in Miami back then. And it's just, we made $1 million in our first year in profit.
Which is something to be said for the 80s.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, because
What's
we
that
were
equivalent
charging
to today?
$4 for a hamburger back then.
Wow.
You know.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's probably could have been like $2 million today.
Yeah.
And so from there, we thought we were bulletproof. Dennis and I, we both bought Porsches, a sailboat. We just, we got too successful, too fast. We thought it was easy.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it really led to a big crash.
Okay. So I think there's a few lessons to pull. I think one that's coming to my mind right now is that when you have a challenge, go to your employees, because you'd be surprised at what solutions they might come up with, right? And I think we don't go to our line staff like enough for solutions. And you went to your busboy, right? And you knew enough about your busboy to know that he might know somebody because you knew that he was into music. So taking the time to know your line staff employees, what their interests are, and then when you do that, when you come across a challenge, you then know who you can go to for help, right? What's going through your mind as I share this?
Absolutely. You have to, I take a personal interest in all my employees. I have since the very beginning. My dad and my grandfather instilled that in me. And I've never had children. Okay. And I see these kids as like an extension of my family.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think that's a great. What about people who say that you got to draw that line between work-life and balance? How can you treat them and look at them as family, but also how do you find that line of not getting too involved?
I don't think there is a line.
Okay.
I think that now I have grandchildren, and you have to. Not that I have kids. My wife had a daughter.
Gotcha.
So you have to have discipline. You have to have tough love.
Yeah, I love that. So you said you were too successful, or you didn't realize that maybe it was not. I'm sure it was hard work, maybe a little bit of luck, but you thought you were unstoppable.
Right.
I'm sure you are unstoppable. But how did this bite you? How did this hurt you?
So we built up to 6 restaurants in 4 years. And we were partying way too much.
Okay, so the lessons from your dad didn't quite sink in yet, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like father, like son, I guess.
Yeah. So you were partying. So you opened 6 restaurants in 4 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we ended up just having to sell them all.
Okay, all of them? All 6?
Yep.
Wow. What happened?
The investors just said, you guys are out of here.
How long so you said 4 years, 6 restaurants. Paint the picture of what was going on. Really paint that, help paint the picture of what not to do. Like what your lifestyle was, like how were the restaurants no longer profitable? Like what was going on?
Yeah, we just, kind of got to the point where we were, staying out too late at night, not being 100%. Clouded our judgment in some respects, making not the best business decisions. And I guess it was we were just too successful in it. We weren't ready to handle it.
Yeah, I know we're going back 35, almost 40 years.
Yeah.
What were some of the worst decisions you made in that time? Aside from drinking and maybe, I don't know if drugs were involved, but whatever you were doing.
Well, it's hard to be in Miami. And
yeah, exactly. What were the worst business decisions you made?
The worst business decisions I made was not having good advice from people that I could depend on and trust in.
Okay. Knowing what you know now, 40, 35 years later,
right.
What advice would you give to yourself back then? The advice you needed?
Stay within the lines. Just stay focused, stay professional, and realize that you are lucky and don't take it for granted.
Okay, what are the lines? Be more specific.
The lines are, don't do anything in excess.
Okay. This is great. I'm just trying to figure out. I know there's so much I can pull back layers here. I'm trying to figure out which layers to pull back.
Right.
So, just basically not getting ahead of your skis is what I'm hearing, and also having some discipline when it comes to work-life balance, as far as the indulging in the success you were having.
Right.
Okay.
Because at that time, you know, we were making just so much money.
Yeah.
And later in my life, you know, once we left Raffles and we got back to the real world, say, I've had so many nights laying in bed thinking about, I have to pay payroll tomorrow. Where am I going to get the money from to pay payroll?
And you're making $1 million a year.
Right. Well, this is actually after Raffles.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
But, you know, the real world is, you know, you're not going to hit home runs all the time.
Yeah.
You know, restaurant business is tough. You know, so many restaurants don't make it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I certainly had my share that haven't.
So knowing what you know now, what would you have done? You said staying with your lines.
Right. I just would have not.
Maybe put some money away, invest in some assets.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. I just would have found better balance in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I would have probably settled down. Either, you know, married, you know, one of the girlfriends, or not, you know, partied like as much as I was partying, and stay focused. Just make sure that I had a good balance between my personal life and my business life. I would have exercised a lot more at that time. And
got you.
Yeah.
So you had to sell all 6 restaurants. Where were you, like, emotionally after this? Going from extreme highs, driving Porsches, partying every night, having lots of girlfriends, and, you know, just having the time of your life. Where were you emotionally after losing all that?
I was in depression, big time.
How long?
For about almost 8 months.
Okay.
I went back and lived with my mom.
Up in New York?
Yeah.
Okay.
I moved back in with my mom and just kind of licked my wounds.
And how old are you at this point?
At that
early
point,
30s?
Yeah, I was like 34, 35 years old.
Okay. So at what point did you have enough of, you know, licking your wounds? You say, okay, it's time to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and get after it.
Yeah. So I it just kind of came back, you know, got that passion back, and I said to myself, look, you know, I want to stay in the restaurant business. I want to be a successful owner, and I'm going to go back and do it.
Okay. So what was after all these experiences you've had up to this point, you know, now you're a successful operator to some regard, absolutely. How are you doing it differently with all this experience?
Well, you know, I'm just a lot more disciplined.
Yeah.
Taking one step at a time. I seek counsel when I need it. I try to limit my risks, and but my values have stayed the same throughout all of this.
And where would you try to seek counsel? Give me an example of where you go for counsel.
Like having an attorney that you could trust, who will not yes you to death, that'll give you good advice. Having an accountant who could tell you, you know, what you can and can't really do.
Those are the 2 key ones that come up all the time on the show, as far as, like, you need to, like, grow your team beyond, like, the 4 walls of your business. And the first things you need to outsource to are typically an attorney and an accountant. Why are those 2 the big ones?
Because they without them you could lose a lot of money.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, okay, let's take a step back. Let's just zoom to 30,000 feet. It's now the late 80s?
Yeah.
Okay, late 80s. You dust yourself off. You say, let's get back at it. Paint the picture of what restaurants have been in your life from then to now, if that makes any sense. So we can see, because I know you opened the pizza concept, Pezzo?
Yeah.
That was an 80s concept, was it not?
89.
Was that one of your first restaurants, and getting back into it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, before I opened Pezzo, I went to work at a hotel in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
As a manager, and then
was that your first step back into hospitality after getting out?
Yeah, pretty much.
Gotcha.
So, Max and I had an opportunity to open up a restaurant in Boca Raton, and we were seeing around the country that restaurants, especially in New York and California, there were trends for wood ovens, homemade pasta, wood-burning pizza, and things like that.
Okay.
And we said, there's nothing like that in South Florida. Why don't we open up something like that?
Okay.
We visited those places, and so we could do this. And we opened up Prezzo in Boca Raton in 1989. Once again, huge success.
Yeah, I bet.
Huge success. And we were the first restaurant in South Florida to have a wood-burning oven. We offered, like, radicchio, which everybody knows of now, but back then we had to explain to people what radicchio is.
Okay.
And but it just took off. So then, we're off to the races again. From there, we opened up a restaurant called Max's Grill,
Okay.
which I still own today. And then we met the famous basketball player Wilt Chamberlain, and we partnered up with Wilt to open a sports bar called Wilt Chamberlain's.
Okay.
And we had a good solid foundation, and then we grew this business over time to where we had 14 restaurants that stemmed from South Beach to Orlando.
Okay. So 14 so Prezzo, the Max's, and Will Chamberlain's were the first 3 restaurants you opened, getting back into it. And you scaled to how many total restaurants?
14.
14? All right, 14. So, I guess, at what point, I don't even know where to go. There's so many things we could be talking about right now. So, what was it about Prezzo's? Let's start there that you think, you said it was a hit out of the gates. What made it a hit? Why was it so successful? Is it because it was so unique?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was unique, and it had great energy.
Great margins, too, at that time for pizza.
Yeah, the margins were really strong. And once again, it's all predicated on great food, which we had, and, our standards and our values that, transcended everything. And it was scalable. So we opened up a second in North Miami, a third in South Miami.
Okay. How many total Prezzos did you have?
We had 3.
Okay. So how many total Maxes did you have?
I think there were 4 or 5.
Okay. And then how many total Will Chamberlain's did you have?
1.
Okay.
And then we had other concepts.
So from there, we're at 8. That's 8 restaurants. And so there were 6 other concepts?
Well, we had 2 in West Palm Beach and 2 in Orlando. And I can't even remember.
we're missing 2 more, but we're painting a picture.
Oh, I had 2 on South Beach.
Okay, 2 on South Beach. So what were you doing differently this time around that enabled you to scale to 14 restaurants? And how much time?
10 years.
10 years. So from 1989 to 99. Okay.
Right.
What were you doing differently this time around?
So Max and I were a lot more focused.
Okay.
We were disciplined.
So you brought Max back into it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so we delegated. We split up our responsibilities to work for both of our strengths.
Okay.
What
were your strengths?
My strengths were operations.
Okay. What were his strengths?
His strengths were conceptual and like real estate
design, stuff
development.
Like that. Well, you had the real estate license. I was curious if that was going to come back into today's conversation.
Oh no, I left school to become a manager.
Oh, so you never got your
I never
degree?
got my
Okay.
degree in
Gotcha.
In real estate.
Gotcha. So you're focused on operations. He's focusing on like what would that be? I guess like opportunity
development.
Or like, R&D development.
Yeah.
How many other pieces of the puzzle did you need? I mean, was it just you and Max, or did you have other people?
Well, we had over 1,000 employees, you can imagine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we had a director of operations, a controller, a whole bookkeeping department, a purchaser, a marketing person. We had a real company.
So the biggest changes is you had a little bit more, probably something to prove after failing, right? You probably had a little bit like that's never going to happen again.
Right.
What were the other things you were doing differently this time around?
We brought in a consultant,
Okay.
a fellow named Bill Main, and he helped us set up systems. He helped us identify what our culture is.
Okay.
We established our values.
What were the key systems you were missing?
Prior to that,
Yeah, before a bill came in.
a compass.
What do you mean by compass?
I mean, who are we? What do we stand for? What is our culture? And we really had to identify all that to set the foundation for success. Before that, back in Raffles, we were just high energy party place led by two crazy maniacs.
Well, I mean, and plus when you're smaller, when you're only a few locations, your presence, your literal presence, your presence, Mac's presence is there, it echoes, and people can see it and they can absorb that and they can follow. But when you get to 14 locations, you're spread thin, and people don't. The culture isn't as obvious because you're not shoulder to shoulder with the founders. So you got to put that culture on paper, so you can live through these things like core values, missions, your why, and all that stuff.
Right.
That's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely.
So he helped you establish your values. What was that process of establishing your values like?
So we got all of our general managers and chefs together, and we spent 3 days talking about what's important to us. What do we really care about? And by the end of the session, we came down with 5 core values.
Do you remember them?
I live them.
To this day, do you still have the same 5 core values?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What are they?
Okay. Our first value, and this was determined by our team.
Okay.
Having great food and beverages.
1.
Right. And so we're medium-priced restaurants, but we purchase the same quality as any high-priced restaurant in our area. So, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. You have to have a great quality to start with.
Yeah.
Second value is having our employees feel like they're working for the best restaurant in our area. And I'm proud to say that just last year, in the Sun Sentinel, our local newspaper down here, they do a survey every year of employees, and our employees picked us as the top workplace.
I saw that
in South Florida.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
The ultimate compliment.
It's so rewarding. It speaks right to our value.
It does. I love that.
And it's so gratifying. I mean, it's a lifetime achievement.
Yeah. So number 1, have your great products.
Right.
Having your employees feeling like they work for the best is number 2. Number
Right.
3.
Treat your customers like we'd want to be treated when we're a customer.
Okay. Pretty straightforward. The golden rule.
Right. And once again, we're able to quantify that. Back in 2013, the United States Chamber of Commerce, every year they do a Best Small Businesses of the Year. And so we submitted our application for that, which was like writing a term paper. And we got selected as the best business in the southeastern United States.
Wow.
They had 7 regions in the country. We're number 1 in the southeastern.
That's incredible.
And so, but out of all the applicants, they said, we're going to survey all your customers to see what your customers think of you, and we're going to announce it at the awards breakfast in Washington, D.C. for the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
So, so my wife and I and a couple friends go up to D.C., and the night before the event, we went to a friend's restaurant up there and got all liquored up and stuff like that, And the next morning at 7:30, we're sitting there all hungover eating our breakfast, and the president of the United States Chamber says, I'd like to announce the Customer Service Award winner for the United States, and it's Rapaport's Restaurant Group.
Oh, man.
We came in number 1 in the country for customer service.
That's amazing. Don't you worry. I'm planning on pulling back the layers on all these. Once we get the 5 core values out, I want to learn how you achieve those things. So keep going. You're doing great.
Number 4 is continue to grow as individuals. This was important to our team. It's important to everybody. I think some people are content being a server their entire career, or being a sous chef or a manager, and that's great. But some people want to grow, and we want to provide people with the opportunity to continue to grow.
I love that. And that's huge. We're going to pull back some layers on that, I'm sure. What's number 5?
Be financially successful. And we say that that's 5th because if you're not doing the other 4 properly, you're not going to be financially successful. And if you do them properly, you are going to be successful.
Yes. Let's pull some of these apart. I think having a great product, that's pretty self-explanatory. We're not so much. We're here to talk about all the elements around food and beverage that you need to do to be successful. So I'm gonna skip over that one. But having your employees feeling like they work for the best, how do you accomplish that?
Just empathy.
Okay.
Just coming up through the ranks. I remember being in college and have to study for a test and having to work a double and whatnot, and what it took to get through all that. And I just know where these kids are at. I was a busboy, for over 6 years, 4 years in high school and a couple years in college. So I know it's like to bus tables. So, I just like when I go into a restaurant, I talk to every employee, and I used to take so much pride in knowing everybody's name. Even when we had over 1,000 employees.
How do you do that? Is there a system you use for learning names?
No, I just made a point of it. But now, as you get older, you can't remember shit.
Yeah, I'm 35 and I can't remember shit, so I think it's impressive, man.
So now it's a lot more difficult. But at least, spending time with everybody, how you doing, how's school going, how's your folks, just taking a personal interest in everybody and letting them know that if they need anything, if there's anything they ever want to talk about, that I'm personally available to do that.
So what's that look like when you let them know if you need anything, I'm here for you? Is it just an open door policy? Is there, do they know what to do if they do need you? Is there a process put in place on how to reach out to you?
I think my cell phone number is available to everybody, and I don't get called a lot, but when I do, whatever it takes. It's usually a dishwasher who needs money to send back home or whatnot, and we always take care of our people.
So give me an example of when you gave out your phone number, somebody called you, and by opening up that channel of communication, what was the result of that?
Whatever their concern was, I addressed. Sometimes they don't like working for a certain sous chef, or usually now I don't get called if somebody feels there's a harassment issue. We have a HR person and people will go to them, but occasionally I'll get called on an HR issue and I'll get right in the middle of it. I'll handle it myself. And there's nothing more important than how people feel, especially people that are working so hard for you. Mm-hmm. The least I could do is to help them in any way I can.
So when there is an HR situation, in the past when you did get into it, what's the best way to handle those situations?
The best way is to keep it discreet. Let people know that this is totally confidential. Listen to everything they have to say, and then figure out what the best way to proceed is.
Okay. So first step is just make sure it's safe space. Second step, listen, and third step,
take appropriate action.
Okay, gotcha. So first, seek to understand before you jump to conclusions.
Right.
I love that. So up to this point, regarding how to make your employees feel like they work for the best, have empathy, know their names, take a personal interest in them, and let them know that you're there for them. Even going as far as giving them your personal cell phone and letting them know that you can contact them at any time. What else? Anything else?
Yeah, we let them know that when we make decisions, we don't make it for profit. We make it first for our product, then and our guest and our employee. And they understand our values, so they know that we're looking out for them.
I love that. So what you said, it's product, guest, then employee?
Yeah.
Got it.
No, product employee and then guest.
Got it.
But like one of the things that we do, or two of the things we do that a lot of restaurants don't do, is that we drug test and we e-verify.
What's e-verify?
E-verify is a federal program that says you have to be a legal citizen to work.
Okay. Got it.
So
what about, and this is kind of interesting, like maybe I'm getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I think the culture around certain drug use has changed over the past, say, 10 years, right? A lot. Specifically marijuana, right? More and more people smoking marijuana, getting it from their doctors legally, whether it's prescription or recreational. It's like having a drink of a beer today, right? The equivalent. Do you filter out people who use marijuana?
No, I'd have to fire myself.
Okay. So when you say drug testing,
right? I'm talking about OxyContin, cocaine.
Gotcha.
You know, those kind of things. We don't want those people in our restaurants.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. I had to verify. All right. So I think we unpackaged having your employees feeling like they work for the best, and then literally getting the accolades and, you know, showing people that you are the best probably helps too. You know, walking the walk, like, and getting recognized. I mean, I think that recognition probably plays a role, does it not?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't think we need to unpackage that, do we? All right. So moving forward, treating your customers like you want to be treated yourself. It's the golden rule. Any other element on that thought that you want to share with us?
Well, learning guest names.
Mm-hmm. Empathy.
Empathy. You know, we have down here in South Florida, a lot of people like to make up their own menus. So we try to accommodate whatever substitutions, additions, deletions that they want. That's basically it.
Yeah, and so this one's huge right here, and I'm surprised that you guys wrote this down as far back as, was this the 90s when you guys got these, when Bill came in?
Yeah.
So, like, continue to grow as individuals. And I think this is something that we're really just starting to tap into now more universally throughout the industry, is like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And high on that peak is personal growth. Just below self-actualization is personal growth. Did you guys know this back then?
No.
So how is that serving? Give me an example of what you do to make sure your people are continually growing.
Okay. So every year we take our chefs on a trip to either New York, California, Chicago, and we just go into various restaurants and try a bunch of different foods and, you know, expand their horizon when it comes to cooking.
Okay.
General managers, we also take on trips to wine country, you know, mostly. But we bring in speakers. We have conferences where we get everybody together, and we have, you know, guests come in and talk about insurance, you know, just whatever it could be. And with the staff, you know, of course, we do all the safe serves and alcohol awareness and things of that nature. But we give them the opportunity to become managers if they're so interested. And so for servers, if a server has any interest, we train them to be a trainer. And as a trainer, we see how well organized they are and their communication skills and whatnot. And if they feel like they're doing a good job and we feel that they are too, then, you know, we get them in the management program.
At what point do they know that there's a management program available to them?
I'm not sure.
Well,
I guess it's just kind of understood.
Yeah, I asked because we recently had Nick Cirillo on the show from Nick's Pizza out of just outside of Clearwater or somewhere, or something lake, just outside of Chicago. And he talks about the building framing in your business for growth. But like making it so like when you have somebody who joins your team, and if they want to grow, you can show them, okay, this is exactly what you got to do to grow. These are the courses you have to take. This is the information you have to be accountable for, and this is this is the path. So like building that framing and building those paths and putting a big light on them so people know that there's room for growth. What are your thoughts on that?
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. It depends how big you are.
Yeah, for sure. You also mentioned bringing in speakers. Give me some example of the kind of speakers you're bringing in.
Like we'll bring in an insurance person to talk about keeping the restaurant safe, so there's avoid trip and falls. Mm-hmm. We bring in, wine people to talk about, various wines and whatnot. I mean, just whatever seems to make sense, or some things don't even make sense.
Mm-hmm. Got it. What about? Let's see. I mean, pretty straightforward. I mean, you're just giving yourself. You're feeding information. Education seems to be a big part of what you guys do here.
Right.
Then, lastly, fiscal responsibility. I think that's kind of huge because a lot of people, when they think of, you say, "Hey, you're gonna be fiscally responsible," they might immediately go to, "I need to prioritize profit over relationships," right? Do you ever see that happening with people that think like that, or they don't want to make it about the money? But why is it important to be fiscally responsible?
Well, because if you can't pay your employees, can't pay your rent, forget about it. You're done.
So how do you work that? You work that into a core value. Like, how do you act on that?
So we don't really put it in the forefront, but it's certainly there, and we base it off budgets. So we do our annual budgets, and then we update them every quarter, and we do our financial meetings every month to talk about where we're at, where were we in sales, did we hit our budget, didn't we, why did we or didn't we, and go through every line item on the entire financial statement, put together an action plan if we need to work on some things, and then at the end of the quarter, the managers and chefs are bonused partly on their financial statement.
Got it. How many line items are there, just generally speaking?
Geez, it could be 40.
So what are the big elements of that meeting, this quarterly meeting that you're having? Like give us the framing of that meeting so we can try to replicate it.
So myself, our director of operations, controller, and the management team sits down. And we said, okay, our sales for this month, they exceeded last year and they exceeded budget. Great job. Why did that happen? Or if we missed it, we say, lunch sales are down and dinner sales are up. Why do we think that is? And we just brainstorm ideas and come up with a plan.
Got it. And is there a format to planning that you guys use?
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, we have an outline. And the general manager fills out the outline before the meeting, and they put their notes on them, and then we go through there and we just discuss everything.
Got it. What are the key elements to keep in mind when doing this that a lot of people miss when they're doing their quarterlies or annualies?
What do people miss?
Yeah.
I don't know. You mean our people?
Or just generally, it's something that you guys do that not everyone does that kind of gives you like an advantage.
Oh, I don't know what anybody else does.
I'm stretching here. I'm trying to find little nuggets.
Yeah.
You're doing great. I'm loving the conference. I'm loving the information.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we can wrap up the core values. So at what point did you scale back? I mean, you're at, I think you said 14 locations at one point?
In 1999.
So almost 20 years ago,
right.
22 years ago at this point. At what point did you start to shed some of your restaurants, and why?
So Dennis and I both realized that we're not having fun.
Why not?
It was just too big. It was our balance was off again. We were both having problems with our wives at the time because we were gone so much and working so much, and it took away what we were not doing, the things that we both like to do.
Okay.
And we were both tired of working with each other.
Okay. Frankly, right?
So we sold off all the restaurants except for one.
Okay. And that was Max Grill?
Max's Grill, yeah.
Okay. What year was that?
Now this is 2000.
2000. If we have to dissolve a business relationship and all of our assets, what advice do you have? Do we need to have an exit strategy? Do you have an exit strategy before this?
No, it just kind of evolved. And we thought about the best way of doing it. Does he take some of the restaurants? Do I take some? But the fact that we were both getting not divorced only from each other, but from our wives at the same time, it just seemed to make the most sense, is just to liquidate everything, get rid of everybody, and do what we wanted to do.
Okay. What advice do you have for doing that? Hopefully people that are listening to this never have to go through that.
Yeah.
But, it's a real thing that happens often.
Yeah. I would say just make sure you have a great attorney and a great accountant.
Yeah, again, back to the
Yeah.
attorney and accountant, right?
Yeah.
So you since then, over the past 22 years, have scaled back up to 4 locations. So at what point did you feel like you're ready to ramp up again?
So that right after Max and I split up, he was running Max's Grill, and I opened up a restaurant called Henry's.
Okay.
And I ran it. I was the general manager. I went from having,
14 locations.
right,
Yeah.
to here I am working shifts, right?
Oh man, what was that transition like?
I loved it.
Really? Good.
It was great
Awesome.
to get back to where I really had my fun, dealing with the employees and dealing with the customers. It got me to reset all my priorities and values and everything else, and it was really a lot of fun.
So what was that reset? What were your new priorities at this time?
Just making sure the doors got open at 11:30.
Everyone was on time and wearing the uniform, right?
Right.
A clean uniform. And how long? So this was Henry's.
Right.
It's no longer with us, right?
I sold it, I guess, 3 years ago.
Okay. And you said that your other Max got Max's Grill,
Right.
but now that's in your family.
Now,
again.
you're right.
So did Max sell it back to you?
He's out of the business, yeah.
Okay. When did that happen?
That happened 2 years ago.
Okay. And when did you open? Because we also have Deck 84 and Burt and Max.
Right.
So
what happened was I opened up Henry's, and then from Henry's I opened up a restaurant called Bogart's in a movie theater.
okay.
And I took over this movie theater. It was a Cinemark movie theater that they were running themselves, and they were losing $400,000 running it, and they asked me if I would run it.
A lot of money to lose.
And so I said, we could do this. And we went in there and we paid them $500,000 a year in rent. So they went from losing 400 to making 500, and we made a ton of money ourselves just by instilling our values and our standards and our culture. But it was great. I mean, we were doing well over 1,000 covers on a Good Friday, Saturday night up there.
So what were the key elements you changed? I mean, you obviously the culture, the five core values of your product, your employees, your guests, your continued growth as individuals, and fiscal responsibility.
Okay.
But specifically, what were some of the things that you changed? It was a drive-through, you said?
No, it was a movie theater.
Okay, movie theater.
So the first thing we did is we looked at the staff. But we were going in there before we bought it, so we had a good idea of what was going on. So we terminated on the first day 3/4 of the staff.
Okay.
And I brought in people, from Henry's and people that have worked with me in the past to right the ship.
Okay, so you took care of the people issue. What was next?
The food.
Okay.
So we implemented our menu and brought in the quality standards that we like to cook with and whatnot. And so we got the food right.
All right.
And then we brought in more staff and got everybody trained properly and got everybody on board. Then we had a big grand opening party and promoted the hell out of it.
I was going to say, how did you spread the word out of like the new ownership?
We just marketed it. We had a big party for it and donated the proceeds to a local charity. But I was well known in the community because I've been here all along.
Yeah.
So I just...
So the word got out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The word got out. And and I thought, I'm going to own this forever. And here's a good thing to talk about for all you out there that are listening. So nothing lasts forever.
Right.
Here I have a restaurant in a movie theater that's doing $5 million a year in business.
2 locations.
No, just the one location is doing $5 million.
Wow.
And I'm saying, who could open up another movie theater near us, right? Fast forward 10 years later, there's movie theaters all around us.
Yeah.
And now these new places have reclining seats and, all this other stuff. And the movie theater I was in never wanted to make any changes. They didn't have to because I'm paying them $500 a year, you know. And my lease was up, and I said, I'm not going to renew it. It just didn't feel right anymore. The world was world was passing us by because they were standing still.
And that's the power of relativity right there. Relative to where you were in the earlier 2000s, you're never going to sell this thing. It's your baby. But as the world evolves and changes around you, things don't always look as glamorous as they once did. Right. Yeah.
Right. So, so we just gave him back the keys after 10 years.
Wow.
You know.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
But then, so during that time, I had a restaurant that we had a recession in 2007 to 2008.
Okay.
And I had a restaurant that was a little more fine dining than my other places. And that restaurant, we were forced to sell it because we were losing money there during the recession.
Mm-hmm. What was the name of this restaurant?
It was called Opus 5.
Opus 5.
And
so you have Henry's, the movie theater, Opus 5. How many total restaurants did you build back up to the second time around?
Well, the most we've had at one time is 4 now.
Okay, so that's now, in this moment. Okay.
Right. So Opus 5, if just the timing wasn't right, and timing has a lot to do with the success of a business too.
Absolutely.
You know, and so, you know, that just didn't work out. And then I was just kind of licking my wounds again because when you lose money, it hurts.
Yeah, of course.
And a friend of mine calls me up and says, Burt, I have a location for you. It's down on the water. And I said, yeah. And I said, you know, I don't know if I'm really interested in opening another restaurant right now.
Yeah.
And he said, Burt, I'm telling you, you got to come down here and look at this.
It looks like a beautiful location.
Yeah,
beautiful facility. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I said, all right, I'll come down.
Yeah.
So I go down there. I'm standing out there on the water. It's a beautiful spring day. The fish are jumping out, you know, underneath the mangroves. And I'm saying, what's the catch? What's the catch?
Yeah.
So the owner of the building shows up, and he happened to be an older guy from New York who used to eat in my grandfather's restaurant.
Okay.
So he and I hit it off.
Small world, right?
Yeah, and we talked for 2 hours, and he said, do you want to take this place over? I said, what's the deal? And he tells me what the deal is, and I said, I'll take it.
What was the catch? Was there a catch?
There was no catch, except the restaurant that was there was a fine dining white tablecloth restaurant.
Okay.
And they, too, succumbed to the recession.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, man, being on the water, great place for fish tacos and burgers and a great bar. And so I go home and I say to my wife, I said, I think I just agreed to do another restaurant. She said, what are you, crazy? So, you know, I put together a group of investors. We opened up Deck 84 in 2010.
Yeah.
And it took off like a rocket ship.
That.
We were running 8 bartenders and 2 barbacks on a Sunday afternoon.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's huge.
So, go ahead.
And, you know, it right now, you know, we're averaging over 1,000 people a day right now during the season. So, I mean, it's just a huge operation.
Amazing. So, I think the only other restaurant we haven't mentioned is Burt and Max.
Okay.
So, when did that open?
Burt and Max opened in 2007? No, 2012.
Okay.
I
think that
so
was the
long.
most recent one, right?
Yeah, 2012. And so what happened is a shopping center was being built in a undeveloped area of Delray Beach. And they realized that they needed to get an anchor tenant in here. So they said, well, Max's Grill would be perfect. It's far enough away, and people know it. And then they said, well, you know, there's two guys in Max's Grill. There's Burt and there's Max.
Yeah.
So they came to me and say, Burt, you know, we heard that you're the guy we should talk to. How'd you like to open up a restaurant out here? And they said, we'll put up the money up for it.
Wow.
And I said, that's great. And they said, yeah, but you need to call it Max's Grill. And I said, well, I can't call the restaurant Max's Grill. I have my own brand.
Yeah.
And I said, how about if I call it Burt and Max's Grill? And he said, okay, that's great. And so that's how we got to Burt and Max's.
Beautiful. I mean, there's so much I feel like we could talk. I mean, you just have such a wide, you know, just breadth of experience in the industry. What haven't we discussed up to this point that you think would be of value? Because I know you know yourself better than I do, right? What special knowledge, skills, experiences have we not been able to pull on up to this point that we could get out there for the listeners?
Well, I just think the biggest takeaway, of course, is, culture and values.
Yes.
And just having a vision on where you want to go and how you're going to accomplish it. And if you're out there thinking about this as a career, you need to have a mentor, and you need to have role models. Mentor and role models are key. And what you have to do is just read about somebody or see somebody, find out what made them successful, and figure out if that's a path that you could do. Or, not every path is the same, but that should be like your compass.
Burt, I kind of feel like you just gave like a selfish plug for Restaurant Unstoppable podcast in the network, because that's what it's all about, is giving the industry role models. You're a role model, but hearing your story, painting that picture. What are your values? And then we're doing a lot of what you said. Like in the network, we've done a workshop on core values and a workshop on visioning and the importance, led by Ari Weinswag from Zingerman's and Rudy Mick, from Mick Consulting. So like the best of the best out there sharing their information, and also peer mentoring. Like I'm going to invite you to come hang out for 30 minutes in the network to reflect on this episode. So I agree with 100% with everything you just dropped on us, and I'm trying to create that on Restaurant Unstoppable Network. Selfish plug. Good. I had to, because you just reinforce what I believe. So thank you.
What you're doing is invaluable.
Thank you.
And there's a book out there that everybody who is thinking about a career in the restaurant business should read. It's called Setting the Table by Danny Myers.
Yep.
I bought 30 copies of it and gave it to all my managers to read.
I love that. I do have one more question that popped into my head, because I think you have unique experience with this. It doesn't come up a lot on the show, but what do we need to know if we do want to sell a restaurant? What things does a restaurant need to be sold?
A buyer.
Okay. But what else?
So you just have, if you're going to sell a restaurant, just have to really determine why you want to sell it, what you're going to do, what are you going to use the money for, where do you want to go from there, and then figure out what the value is. What you think the value is not what anybody else is going to think.
Yeah.
And you have to be realistic and know that you're not going to get anything near where you want, unless you get really lucky. And just see how it goes.
Well, specifically what's coming into my mind, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, is you can't sell a business that is dependent on people. So if you're selling a business, does it have the systems, the processes, does it depend on people, or does it depend on operation, right? And if you're selling a business that depends on people, and when you leave, the people come with you, that business doesn't become it loses all of its value, right?
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
See, I would never buy an ongoing business. Like if I was going to buy a restaurant, it would be closed, and I'd go in there and take the benefit of the
shell.
Yeah, they call it second generation space.
Turnkey,
yeah. So that's really the best way if you're going to become an owner, is not to start a place from scratch. It's just cost prohibitive.
Yeah. We say all the time, be someone's exit strategy, because there's people, they're unhappy. Believe it or not, Burt, there are unhappy restaurant owners out there, and they want any opportunity to get out. And if you can be someone's exit strategy, if that concept aligns, like the kitchen aligns with what you want to do, and you can just get a turnkey operation, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, just remember that if you don't live your own dreams, you're living somebody else's dream. So you don't want somebody else's culture. Mm-hmm. If you're going into this, you want to put your own blueprint on it. So, you don't want to pay for someone. If someone says they're doing $2 million a year, you don't want to pay for that.
No.
You want to start and do your own thing.
Yeah. What about the future of the restaurant industry? What things happened over the past year that you think are new, things that are relatively new because of the past year? And what's sticking around? What's going? Like, how's the future of the restaurant industry going to be different going forward?
I think labor is tougher than ever. Mm-hmm. Every restaurant tour that I talk to is understaffed right now, and payroll's going to get more. Staffing is going to get more expensive.
Yeah.
So
I think the role of a server is going to go away, unless it's like the brand is absolutely hinges on it. because of this right here.
Yeah.
And I'm pointing at a QR code on the table, and coupled with this right here, and I'm holding my phone because I think, and I'm just curious in your feedback on this. I mean, I think there'll still be people on the floor, but they'll serve more of a concierge role, kind of like a glorified manager touching tables, but just like you have like your area and your people, you're responsible for those people, but they're going to be taking their own orders and placing their own orders through their phone. And I think that's going to cut back huge on labor expenses.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. There has to be change.
Yeah.
And, not with my generation because, we're older and set in our ways. But, for, guys your age and younger, yeah, it's evolving.
Anything else that you think that I didn't mention just then that will be changing or?
Well, I think food will be a lot more automated. You could see it in equipment right now.
Yep.
I mean, there's smart equipment where you put the recipes into the equipment. I was at Woodstone yesterday looking at a piece of equipment, and they have a computer on there that has all your recipes in there, and it tells the cooks put in four ounces of onions, and it cooks it at a certain temperature, and it's like...
Was it Mies? Name of the product or the technology?
Yeah.
Was it called Mies?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
I just interviewed the founder of Mies not too long ago.
Yeah.
What are your are you using Mies?
No, I'm just looking.
Okay.
But it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the wave of the future.
Yeah. If you guys are interested in Mies, head over to getmies.com/unstoppable. They are an affiliate. They've been recommended organically a bunch of times, and that's what it takes to be. That's what it takes for me to say go to this/unstoppable. They've been recommended a bunch of times organically, so it's a great tool for training because there's not just recipes and it's not just costing; it's also training. It's e-learning built into it too.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting stuff happening there. Sorry, I didn't mean to steal your
Oh, that's okay. You have your commercials you got to do.
Keep going.
But so I think just staffing is going to be the biggest thing in food service.
I like it. Yeah, I agree too. Okay, so one last question before the speed round. The mission statement of Restaurant Unstoppable is to inspire, empower, and transform the industry. And the way we do that is by making an example of people like you. And I do believe that if we transform the restaurant industry, we'll transform the world because of the influence we have. This industry touches so many people. How have you transformed since getting into the industry in the early 80s to today, the man you are today? How have you transformed?
I've transformed by knowing that nothing lasts forever, that everything is a gift, and you have to appreciate today.
I love it. We're back, and the first question I have for you is, what is your it factor? A habit, a trait, a characteristic you believe most contributes to your success?
Self-discipline.
What is your biggest weakness?
I look at life through rose-colored glasses.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
I think everybody's good. Everything's going to go well.
Optimism.
Yeah.
Okay. And I want to go back to discipline because I think that's huge. And I'm curious, what do you do to be disciplined?
So I eat well. I exercise every day. I have a set routine. And at work, my meetings are always at set times. I do everything according to a schedule, and that works for me.
Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, I've gotten to that place a few times. I'll admit, whenever I move or whenever I reestablish, like your routine gets uprooted, and it gets hard to get back into it. But it is huge for sure. What is one question you ask or thing you look for when you're growing your team?
Do I like this person?
Okay, and why is that the question you ask?
Because if I don't like them, it's not going to work.
Yeah. What's your biggest challenge today?
My biggest business challenge is finding enough good people to staff the restaurants.
How are you overcoming that?
Well, hopefully by being picked as the top workplace, people will see that and they'll say, I want to work for that company.
For sure. That's a good strategy. Share one code of conduct or behavior you teach your team. So this is a core value. I mean, we covered all of your core values, or it's a core value or behavior you teach your team.
If I have to do your job, what do I need you for?
What is one uncommon standard of service you teach your team? So this is something that is common within the four walls of your 4 restaurants, but not within the industry, throughout the industry.
Drink through it.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, if the power goes out at 8 o'clock, turn it into a party.
Okay. make the best out of the worst situation.
Right.
I love that. What is one book that's a must-read to make us a better person or restaurant owner? You already mentioned Danny Meyer's at the table. Any other ones?
7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yes. Awesome. Both those books are on Audible, by the way. If you head over to audibletrial.com/unstoppable, first book is on me, and you're supporting the show, and thank you in advance if you do that. What is one thing you feel restaurateurs don't do well enough or often enough?
Give back to the community.
What is one service you've hired or outsourced to?
Food safety and sanitation. Inspections.
Okay, and what's the name of the company?
Food safety and sanitation inspections.
Okay.
That's
Awesome.
funny. Right? It's a good name, right?
Is it regional just to Florida?
He's just in this area right
Who's
here.
he?
His name's Scott Berger,
Okay.
and he has 3 or 4 guys that work with him. They come into each restaurant once a month, and they have a report that's similar to the health department report, but it's a lot more detailed.
Okay. And how has that served you?
It's unbelievable. Every visit, he trains and develops our managers and chefs on proper food safety and sanitation issues, and it just makes us feel a lot more comfortable that what we're doing is right.
Yeah.
And when the health inspectors come in here, they love it.
Yeah, and be sure to check out the show notes. I'll be sure to link to that company. And his name one more time was?
Scott Berger.
Scott, you got a little plug here. I mean, hopefully we get you some business. And this is actually almost the last question. What is one piece of technology that you've recently adopted in your restaurants that's had a huge impact on communication, efficiency, profitability, anything along those lines?
I don't think we've really brought anything in lately.
What's one that's been around for a while that's just huge?
Handheld devices.
Okay, and who are you using?
The servers are using it for taking orders, especially if they're far away from the kitchen.
And that's with, what's your POS? It looks like
Spot on.
Spot on? Okay, beautiful. This is the last question. You ready for it? If you got the news you'd be leaving this world tomorrow, all the memories of you, your work, and your restaurants would be lost with your departure. With the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom that you could leave behind for the good of humanity and for your legacy, what would those 3 pieces of wisdom be? That's a tough one.
Life is short.
That's
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
3 pieces.
You got one. I mean, you dropped a lot on us today.
Yeah.
Take care of your people is one that I would say.
Oh, yeah, business-wise, for sure. I mean, treat people the way you would we wanted to be treated, and
Golden rule.
and be honest.
Be honest. Burt, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. We wrap up every chat by calling somebody out. That's how I found you. Von Dugan called you out. Thank you so much, Von. I'm happy you did. This was a great conversation. Who do you respect and admire in the industry and believe would make a great guest mentor like you made for us today?
I think your listeners would enjoy hearing from Doug Zeif.
Doug Zeif. Look out, Doug. What's Doug's story?
I met Doug. He was a manager when we first opened Raffles back in 1980.
Okay.
Worked for some different companies along the way until he was the opening general manager of the first Cheesecake Factory.
Oh, wow.
And helped build Cheesecake Factory up to what it is. He left Cheesecake and was, I think, the director of food and beverages for, was it Hyatt or Waldorf or something like that, and now he's a consultant.
All right, Doug, look out. I'm coming after you. I'd love to get you on the show. And how can we connect with you if we've resonated with your episode and we want to, maybe come join your team or get whatever, consulting or whatever? What's the best way to connect?
To me?
Yeah.
My phone number is 561-289-1959.
All right, this has been a great chat. Burt, thank you so much. I just can't say thank you enough. There is no questioning, my man. You are unstoppable.
Thank you.
Cheers. We'll cut it there.